This is the ugly thrifted nightgown challenge. Is there any way to possibly make this look cool? Let's give it a shot. First thing I want to do is add 3 triangle inserts, 1 on each arm on the top and 1 in the back to make it bigger and flowier. I need to find the center of the back of this gown. So I am just going to line up the side seams. And once I get that lined up nicely, I am going to take my iron and press a crease here so I know where to cut. Okay, see, I have a nice crease now down the center in which to cut. And I am going to cut the back all the way open to about 1 inch below the last piece of elastic on the neck. Now I have the back cut open, and I'm going to do the same thing to the top of the sleeves. Here's the front of my gown. Here is the bottom seam of a sleeve. I'm just going to line that seam up with itself nicely, lay this out, and I'm going to press along the top to give me a crease to cut. Now I'm just going to cut this open on both sides, 1 inch to the neckline. I don't have a shoulder seam on this one. If I did, it would be about 1/2 inch to the shoulder seam. Now it's time to measure to see how big I want my triangle inserts. My nightgown has snaps, so I'm going to unsnap this and open it up. Okay, I don't want to measure it like this. This is the cut in the back middle, because when you open it up, it shrinks. Did you see how the top came down? And if I measured it before I opened it up, my triangle would be way off. So I'm going to open it up to about where I'm going to want it. Now I'm going to measure from the top of the cut up here to, I'm using the edge of my table, and I get 35 inches. Now I'm going to add 1 inch, 1/2 inch for seam allowance up there, and another 1/2 inch at the bottom, just in case things don't align properly. I have a little extra. So this will be 36 this way. And then I'm going to measure, because I just kind of eyeball how big I want my triangle. You may want yours a lot bigger. You may want just a narrow one or nothing at all. And I get 21.5 inches. I'm going to add 1/2 inch for seam allowance, giving me 22 inches. So 36 by 22 is my triangle. Now I'm doing the same thing with the sleeve. It's a little harder to see because I can't separate it and show you on the table, but I got 16.5 by 13 will be my triangle. Okay, so to make my triangle, and I'll do the same with the sleeves as I do the back. Now I just got a piece of wrapping paper, folded it in half, and on the crease, I measured up the 36 inches that I need and made a mark. And I need 22 inches at the bottom. Half of that is 11. This is folded in half. So I mark 11. And now I'm just going to connect those 2 dots and cut it out. Now I'm just doing this again for the sleeve, my 16.5 by 13 triangle. Here are my 2 triangles. Now I need to find the fabric that I want as my inserts. And I'm going to use this beautiful thrifted linen tablecloth as my inserts. I will be using RIT dye for natural fabrics. I believe this is cotton, there are no labels, and linen is natural, and they both dye nice. Now, I'm just going to lay these patterns out on my tablecloth where I want them. I'm going to trace out one of the large and 2 of the small, 1 for each sleeve. And I'm using tailor's chalk. And then you just cut out your triangles. I just want to say, please do not take this too seriously. I literally feel like I'm down in my basement playing around. Sometimes my designs are magical, sometimes they're monstrosities. There are no guarantees. And if I was put pressure on myself to guarantee everything's going to work out, I probably would never start. I figure it out as I go. Here are my 3 lovely triangles. Now it's time to sew them into the gown. This is the back of my gown where I cut it open. I will be sewing this in here. And I'll only show you on this one because the sleeves are going to be exactly the same. Okay. I want my seams on the outside. So I am going to be sewing wrong sides together. Now, if you want your seams on the inside, you'll want to sew right sides together. So flip your gown, work on the back side of it, and then put right sides together. So what I'm going to do is go to the very point of this cut. And I'm just going to grab it and sort of look inside here. Now, my triangle, I am going to, so there's the very tippy top of my cut. I'm going to lay this at my machine down like this. Now, the tip will be a good 1/2 inch extending past that point. And I will lay it down and I will put my needle in of my machine right here and just sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down. And I won't pin this or anything. I will just line up my edges. I am using orange thread because I want to dye this orange, and I'm using a straight stitch. Okay, now I have this sewn to this side, and I need to sew it to this side. And I'm looking at the top part of it. Now I am just going to take my triangle and lay it next to my gown fabric. And I am going to just put my needle in maybe 1/4 inch above that triangle and just start cruising down this side. Okay, now look, my triangle and the bottom of my gown. Now it's about 3 inches longer than the bottom of this gown. And would somebody please share with us why that happens? It happens to me a lot. And I think I have it all figured out, and I just don't know why sometimes that happens. One of you expert seamstresses, let's all share and get this figured out finally. I don't know why it does it, but it's still going to work. Now I'm going to do the sleeves. I won't take you with me for the whole thing because I'll do it exactly like this. Okay, now everything's more flowy. There's the insert in the back, and here is the wider sleeve. Okay, so here's the length of everything on me. I want to add 5 more inches for now to the sleeves and 5 more inches to the length. And then we'll be adding a little more later. But what I'm going to do is use this bed sheet. Now it's a fitted one. They're not as easy. They're not hard to cut, just not as easy as a flat sheet. But I am going to try to use those little florals. Now everything we're doing right now will be dyed orange. So it doesn't really matter what color this is as long as it's cotton and it's kind of light in color, so it will dye. Now I am just going to tear some of that elastic off the sheet. Now I am just cutting 5.5-inch strips, giving myself 1/2 inch for seam allowance, and cut out as many of these floral strips as I can. Okay, I have about 5 strips cut, and I'm thinking each sleeve may take about 1, and the bottom will take 2 or 3. But I'm going to start on this sleeve, adding this to it. Now here is the bottom of one of my sleeves, and underneath there is the original seam. I like starting there because it's kind of inconspicuous, and I'm going to take one of my strips and I am going to put these right sides together, and I am going to start at that seam underneath the arm, and I am going to lay these together, right sides together, and I will start sewing about 1.5 inches from the very end. That'll give me a flap in which to finish this when I get all the way around. And as I sew, I am just going to do a little bit of pinch pleating. And so I will start about 1.5 inches in, put my needle, and about every 1.5 inches, maybe fold it on itself about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. Okay, I'm almost all the way around. And this is where I started, where I left that little flap. Now, right here, I'm just going to backstitch a little bit because I'm going to have to pull this out. But before I do, I need to cut this long strip off and sew it to this edge so it's a solid piece. Now, I just have to kind of eyeball this here where I want to cut it off. So I want to sew it to this, and I want to give myself a little extra pleating. So maybe I'll cut this about right there. And take this out of my machine. Now, I have where I started and that piece I just cut. I am going to sew those right sides together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so here's the new ruffle, and I still have a gap right here. So I am going to go to my stitch line where I stopped. Just go forward and back a little bit there. And I'm going to close that up, and I'm going to make a couple little pleats as I go. And that is what it looks like. Okay, here's the shape of the sleeves so far. Very cute. And now I just want to add with the same fabric a ruffle to the bottom. And I think I want it to be like a good 20 inches, 15, 20 inches longer than the diameter of the bottom of the gown. And so I think I will start by sewing 2 of these together. I have one more, I can always add another one. But before I sew the ruffle on, I just want to put these right sides together, or you could put them wrong sides together if you want to see the frayed edge. And just 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I have one long piece. Okay, so here's the bottom of my gown, which I will now call a duster. And this is going to be a lot easier to sew than even the sleeves, because I don't have to butt the ends together. I will just put these down, right sides together like I did the sleeve, start at the very corner, and do the same pleating sew that we did on the sleeve till I get to the front on the opposite side. Okay, so now I have the basic shape that I want, and it's time to dye it when I'm done dyeing it, I'll add quite a few more details to it, but let's go upstairs and dye this orange. Okay, got my play clothes on. I thrifted this t-shirt with the TM, and my name is Tracy Myers, so had to get that. Okay, I thought I had orange RIT dye for natural fabrics. All I had was dye more. So I'm going to have to do this on my stovetop. I filled a stainless pot full of water to about right here, and I'm letting it come to almost a boil. Now I need to get my duster wet before I put it in and just wring it out really good. Okay, I turned the fire down to just below simmer, the lowest that I can get it on, and I can probably even shut that off now and then, but I'm going to put a teaspoon of Dawn soap in, and then I'm going to dump my RIT dye. Now this is for synthetics and natural fabrics. Now regular RIT dye for natural fabrics you can't use on synthetics, but you can use this one on both. And I'm going to put in the whole bottle. This is apricot orange. Now this may be too sort of fallish colors for me, so I am making a mess. Hold on one second. Now I'm going to stir this, and then I'm going to test it with a paper towel to see what color it is. I want it to be fun, summery, bright orange. Yeah, so I think I'm going to add some yellow RIT dye. Now you can use this on the stovetop, but you can't use dye more in the wash machine. So I'm going to add some yellow to help brighten that up, hopefully. Okay, so I think I have this about where I want it. I don't have any more yellow left, not much more I can do. So I am going to add my wet duster, leave it in there for about 30 minutes, stirring constantly. A little tip here, use a metal spoon. It'll dye your wooden spoons. I totally spaced that off. Okay, it's been about half an hour, and I'm just going to rinse this in cold water until the water runs clear from my duster. Now I'm just going to wring this out nice, and you can line dry. I am going to tumble dry in my dryer. Now, while that is in the dryer, I am going to work on the last ruffle I'm going to do, and I'm going to add it to the sleeve underneath the floral ruffle we just did and to the very bottom. And I am going to use flannel. And I bleached all these while everyone was probably sleeping this morning. And these were mainly orange, red, and green, and they bleached these colors. I bleached them in a bucket in my laundry room tub. In the bucket, it was about 1/3 bleach, 2/3 water. Soaked these for about a half an hour, rinsed them, washed them, and dried them. Now I just want to cut strips, sew them together, because they will be our final ruffle. First, I'm just deconstructing these a bit so I have a nice flat surface in which to cut strips. Now I am just going to cut out a bunch of 2.5-inch strips and sew them all together. I don't know how much I'll need. I'll just sort of eyeball this, and I can always add more or cut a little off. Now I'm taking those strips of flannel and I'm just sewing them together. I'm doing wrong sides together, 1/4-inch seam allowance. I just butt them up to one another, sew it until I have one long piece. Now, I will be sewing this from the top here down the front, all the way around the bottom, and back up the other side. And that is 196 inches, so I want this to be double that. I probably won't use all of that, but that gives you a good gauge. And how I sew this on, super simple. Here's the neckline. Here are the snaps going down the front of the duster. I will overlap 1/4 of an inch. I will have my ruffle facing on the outside. Just go to my machine, start sewing, and I will about every 1.5 inches overlap this on itself about 1/4 of an inch all the way down this side, around the bottom, and up the other side. Okay, that's what that ruffle looks like from a distance. This is what it looks like closer up. Now, if I were to snap these, one ruffle would be underneath, but I don't ever plan on snapping those. It's more of a duster for me. Now, I have sort of a squared off section there. Don't really like that, so I think I'll just kind of angle that down like that a little bit. Now I want to trim this sleeve with a flannel ruffle on both sides, and so this time I'm going to use a bluish flannel, and I cut this one 2 inches wide and piece them together. And now I am just going to start underneath and ruffle it just like I did these. And when I get all the way around to where I started, I'm just going to overlap it a couple inches onto itself. Here's what the sleeves look like. So fun. Now I want to add some patches. Okay, so I collected a little pile of fabrics. These are all thrifted. I have like a little towel, table runner. This was a blazer, just some fabric, a remnant, another fabric remnant, and some old upholstery fabric. And I just cut out about 10 patches, varying in shapes and patterns. Here's a ruler, just sort of for reference, about the size of these. Now I'm just pinning these on where I want them. I have 2 overlapping right here. And I also have 2 overlapping down towards the bottom. I have one right here, there, here, here. I put kind of a big one on the sleeve and another sort of small one on the sleeve. Now I'm just going to go to my machine and get these all sewn on. I'm going to use a straight stitch, my orange thread. I will stay close to the edges until they're all complete. And you can use a zigzag stitch if you want. I'm just using a straight one to make it go a little faster. The sewing is all done. So cute. Now I am going to wash this. I'm going to wash it by itself in cold water on a gentle cycle. I want all that flannel to fray. I'm going to have raw edges. I want all those patches to fray. And I'm probably going to have to clip some wild, out of control fraying or tangled fraying. I want it frayed, but I don't want it like crazy unruly. And then I will style it and show you what it looks like. Okay, all done. I tell you, this is one of the lightest weight, most comfy dusters I think I've ever made. And it's perfect for the winter into spring transition because it's so lightweight. I'm going to bring it in a little closer so you can see more of the details. And I thank you so, so much for watching.